Welcome back to Mark Holowitz, the vlog. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Today is a wonderful day here in Canada. Of course, we've got snow on the ground. I mean, 2 weeks ago we had minus 40°C weather and it was just horrendous. Cars were dead everywhere. Lots of cars wouldn't start. It was just too darn cold. So it reminds us, once we get the cars out, like the Lamborghini right here, how much we really do enjoy these, because we don't get this kind of weather. We don't get summer weather every single day. But that's besides the point. Today we want to talk about something different. We're talking about the Lamborghini or any exotic car. And I think it's important for you guys out there. A lot of you guys who own these cars already know this, but lots of you guys that don't and maybe are considering buying these cars have to know what you're getting up against. Now, when I bought my car here, which is a 2005 Lamborghini Gallardo right here, and let's just take a look. Take this off. Show you a little closer of the car. Do you like the early car like this with the square tail lights, or the later cars that have the narrow tail lights? Which ones do you guys prefer? I mean, most people are going to say the LPs, which are the later models, and this is of course being an early one as it's a 2005. But that's besides the point. So if you're shopping for a Lamborghini, you need to know some of the key things that you need to look at when you're buying one of these cars. First of all, do you have budget? And what does your budget look like? If you have, say, $100,000 to spend, you can only afford certain cars. Maybe you have $150,000 to spend, you can maybe expand your search a little bit. This car here you can find for US 80 to 100, Canadian you can find this cars from about 100 to 125 grand in similar condition with similar miles. Now, there's things you need to understand when you're buying these cars, and I'm going to walk you through some of that. Now, when I bought this car and I was shopping around at a bunch of Gallardos, one thing that struck my mind was CarProof Carfax. And the thing that I came across was lots of cars that I stumbled across had small amount of claims, whether it was an insurance claim or they had some sort of history on the CarProof that suggested that there was an accident. But a lot of the cases, when you look closer, there weren't actually accidents. See, after all, when you're talking about things like the windshield on the front of this car, those are $4,000, $5,000. Each one of these, here, let's walk around. Or these windshields are about $44,500. These headlights are about $5 grand a piece. So if you're buying them from the dealer, those headlights are about $5,000 each. $5 grand, $4,000 here. So all it takes is maybe a little road rash, which was coincidentally what I found on a car that I was looking at. Had this replaced, the headlight replaced, and the windshield replaced. There was a little paint work on here and here, but there was no damage. They didn't replace any of these parts. So that really told me a story. If the headlights were gone and the windshield was gone, but none of the other panels were gone, obviously it wasn't in a collision. So I came across cars that had comprehensive claims. So you need to kind of understand the differentiation. Now, nobody wants to see any kind of claims, but the reality is many of these cars have claims. For example, a lot of people will just run a windshield through a claim, through an insurance claim, because it's almost $5,000. Nobody wants to pay $5 grand out of their pocket like that. I mean, some people do, but honestly, to have a claim on a car like this is usually not as big a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. I did stumble across numerous cars when I was shopping for these that had claims of some type. The difference is collision, an accident claim, and it'll spell that out on a CarProof, or if it says comprehensive, which I've seen cars with comprehensive claims, which just means it's something else other than an accident. So in other words, could have been gravel sprayed by a gravel truck, hit it with a bunch of rocks, and then they just wanted to touch up the front end. Comprehensive could have been that. Could have been an angry ex-girlfriend that keyed your car and then you just wanted to respray it and put some new parts in there. It could have been vandalism, but generally as a comprehensive claim, it's not a collision, because collision will either go under your collision insurance or there will be some other history on that. So a lot of these cars you'll find with insurance claims, and that's really not the end of the world. So let's do a quick walk around of my Lamborghini here, and I will share with you guys some of the specifics on the early cars, later cars, and I'll share some of that knowledge and what I call wisdom with that. And hey, whatever, call it what you will, but I'll give you what you guys need to know to make educated decisions on these cars. So essentially, you get a car that looks like this from 2004, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all more or less look like this. So that's pretty standardized. They have the same style of taillights, They have the same 5-liter engine underneath the compartment here. They are essentially the same car. But let's back this up. So in 2004, they did not have a front nose lift. So this nose lift did not exist on a 2004, but because this is a 2005, you hit a little button in the center and the nose comes up. So this has a nose lift, it's a 2005, otherwise very much the same 0405. Then if you get these cars in a 2006, all of a sudden they did a little fine tuning, the ECU, those cars had a little more power. So you went from 500 horsepower in this one to 520 horsepower in the 06, as well as the TCU for the transmission, or the E-gear essentially, was tuned a little bit, so it was a harder shifting and it was a little bit easier on clutches. So when these cars were new, the clutches had a better version of it as well. So generally the 2006 were supposed to have longer lasting clutches, a retuned TCU, and a slightly tuned up engine. So you had about 520 horsepower. Those are the key differences. Then that sort of stuck around for 07 and then 08. The next big change came in 2009. That's when you get into what they call the LP cars. LP, anything 2009 and later. Those have the improved front bumper on them. They have the improved rear taillights, or revised front back taillights. This is solid here, and then there's just a skinnier taillight right here. The cars that were 2004, 5, 6, and 7, and 8, and they again had the 500 horsepower V10 of 5 liters displacement and went up to about 520 horsepower. If you had the Superleggera, they had even a little bit more, but essentially they were more or less the same. Then in 2009, the front spoiler, the front valence changed dramatically, so that whole bumper looked more aggressive. It looked a little bit more Lamborghini Aventador look. It had a more aggressive chin spoiler. The back end here, much of this was the same. However, this was quite different on the LP cars. This back fascia looked quite a bit different. And if you look, the taillights on the LP cars didn't have this wraparound here. They actually had a skinnier light here that ran this way. And you'll notice these cars here have sort of a honeycomb grill to them. There's a bit of a honeycomb almost to match these. This grill here is a bit of a honeycomb, and the taillights have a similar pattern. But the LP cars had an arrow, flashing arrow, that was your signal light. So it was kind of a cool little update. And the LP cars again had a better TCU again, so a better E-gear. They shifted better, harder, and it went up to a 5.2 liter in displacement. Let's look at the inside and the engine, and I'll show you some subtle differences we'll talk about too. So let's go here. We're gonna pop the door open. And now looking at the interior on this car, this is being the early car, it is quite similar to the later cars, the LP cars, but the one giveaway on this car is you'll notice there's a cassette deck there. That is old school. So the 2004 and 5s had the cassette deck. In 06, you also had a navigation screen, so it had the larger screen there. It looked a little more revised in 2006. Later cars, you could also get the Q stitching, which was a nicer look. This is more of a flat style of leather. Again, it's subtle cosmetics, but generally those are some of the differences. Otherwise, a lot of the panel design were the same. You could also get a branding package that had Lamborghini kind of carved into the leather on the dash there. You could also get some branding on the headrests here. But one thing you'll notice is the 2005 has this, whereas the 2004 has just sort of a standard embossed. It doesn't have the colored decal here on here. It's just Lamborghini sort of flat color here. And then the rest is kind of the same. So to open the engine compartment, you got to reach around here and you got to reach through there. Pop that. Now, let's lift this up. Now, because this is an early car, this is the 5 liter that I explained already. 5 liter V10 that makes 500 horsepower, and you could go up to about 530 or change if you had the Superleggera. Now, oil changes, that's a point of discussion here. This car only has 2 places to drain the oil. You have the engine at the bottom of the engine, and then there's the sump tank, which is right under here, right at the very bottom corner. So you have 2 points to drain. On the LP cars, there's several points. There's like 4 or 5 points to drain with. As well as the oil filter on the LP car is much easier. It's actually mounted on top of the engine and very accessible. But on these pre-LP cars like this, the 5 liter, It is tucked way down in there, and you can't even see it hardly. Way down in there. See? That's the filter housing for the oil filter. Very much a painful experience doing an oil change on these cars. Now, recalls. This car, power steering hoses was a major recall. These cars have been known to burst into flames, particularly on a racetrack environment, because of potentially just catching fire. They condense and they drip and then they leak because they corrode, and then it becomes explosive, and next thing you know, the car is up in flames. So that's a recall here. Otherwise, the LP cars are a much simpler animal that way. Now, the other thing you got to remember is all of these cars, if they're in E-gear, what that is essentially a single automated manual gearbox. So that's electric over hydraulic, single clutch actuated in and out. Very coarse, very crude, very jerky and lurchy, and it doesn't matter. The LPs are better, but they're still both kind of garbage for low speed actuation. They're good once you're on the go and you're on the fly on the back roads. These are awesome cars, and that's part of the character. And you really do kind of have to get used to that because that is a character thing. They all have E-gear or a manual gated shifter. Now that is what it is. 3-pedal car, gated shifter. Everybody loves that, but they're becoming very expensive, and you can pay 20, 30, 40% premium just to get a gated shifter car of similar miles. Great cars to have, not going to deny it. Not sure it's worth that much of a premium, but they are great nonetheless. And generally all Gallardos are pretty much all-wheel drive, all of them, with the exception of LP 550-2 was a limited special or limited run of cars. So there's so many similarities. I mean, there are differences between the LP and non-LP cars. I mean, they all pretty much have 19-inch wheels. Some guys upgrade to 20-inch wheels, but you know, that's pretty standard. The chassis is the standard. The gearboxes are pretty similar. A lot of these, the car is the same whether you get an LP or pre-LP car. Both cars actually have advantages and disadvantages. These early cars have slightly less power and a clunkier E-gear transmission, whereas the later cars, it's slightly improved. Still not perfect, but that's an advantage. Now, on the other hand, most people would agree, the pre-LP cars like these, like anything 2004 to 2008, have a far better sound, engine sound. They sound like Formula One, especially when you put a proper exhaust system like I have on here. I have a muffler bypass, or a tubey exhaust at least. They do sound almost Formula One. They have that screeching sound. Now, if you get the LP cars, they have a real throaty sound, and it's all about firing order. It's a different engine entirely, not just increase in displacement, different firing order, different displacement, and quite different in many, many ways. However, they're both great cars, have advantages. Now, it really boils down to how much you have as a budget. What would I prefer? Ultimately, the LP cars are a little bit better, absolutely. Now, you're able to start to get into LP cars for about $130,000 Canadian, or you can get into a pre-LP car like this, into it for about 100 grand Canadian. Kind of depends what your budget is will allow. The LP cars are better overall, but I'm not sure that premium necessarily warrants it. To each his own, of course. This is a great car. If I do upgrade, it won't be to another Gallardo. I'll be moving up to something a little more substantial. However, these cars are great, and they're an awesome place to start out with. As a matter of fact, this car still gets as much fanfare as anything twice its price. You know, this car gets as much looks and attention and thumbs up and appreciation that almost anything now, other than maybe something hypercar like, these cars do just fine, and they're fun to drive, and they're fast, and they have the sound, and they really package everything. It's a Lamborghini in every sense of the word. So I hope that helps you guys. If you're considering a Lamborghini Gallardo, don't necessarily let a small insurance claim get you down, because it could be a windshield that costs 5 grand. So a $10,000 claim doesn't even mean that much in Lamborghini world. And of course, the pricing, it all depends on the budget. So these are great cars for 100 grand, LP for 130, 140 Canadian. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I really like to see more of you guys come back. I'm looking for a bigger following, and I'm just excited to share all my Lamborghini and supercar experiences with you guys. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.